Do you have a paranormal encounter you'd like to share with us? Send us an email with your story for a chance of it being featured on Weird World. The following are two disturbing encounters with extraterrestrial life. American Airman Victor Marshall's week-long ordeal in an underground facility with mysterious alien giants. Then Jacob Morley in his face-to-face meeting with a grey alien visitor in his Texas bedroom. Such accounts challenge our perception of reality and opened up the possibility of extraterrestrial contact. The Nephilim. In the mid-1960s, during the height of the Cold War, a young American airman named Victor Marshall experienced an event that would haunt him for the rest of his life. This is a story of his alleged abduction by beings not of this world, an incident that blurs the line between military secrecy and extraterrestrial contact. Victor, then 21 years old, was stationed at an Air Force base in West Germany. His official military records, specifically his discharge document known as DD-214, confirmed that he served in the Air Force between 1963 and 1966. This provides a verifiable time frame for the extraordinary account. One evening in 1966, while walking back to his barracks, Victor was suddenly and inexplicably abducted. Without warning or explanation, he found himself transported from the familiar surroundings of the military base to a strange underground facility. Confused and stripped to his underwear, Victor discovered he wasn't alone. Several other servicemen were with him, all equally bewildered. Their captors, described by Victor as Nephilim, were giant humanoid beings standing 7 to 8 feet tall. For about a week, Victor and the other soldiers were held against their will and subjected to a series of seemingly meaningless tasks. They assembled puzzles, memorized patterns, and performed physical exercises while under constant observation by the towering entities. Victor, in a small act of defiance, began intentionally making mistakes during these tasks, curious to see how the Nephilim would react. The situation grew even more surreal when Victor was offered the opportunity for intimate relations with human women who were also present in the facility. Victor declined their proposition, his mind struggling to comprehend the bizarre circumstances he found himself in. Throughout their captivity, the soldiers were kept in a state of confusion and disorientation. They were never told the purpose of their confinement or the reason for the tasks they were made to perform. The Nephilim maintained a clinical detachment, observing and recording but rarely interacting directly with the human subjects. After around a week of their strange imprisonment, chaos erupted without warning. The facility was suddenly rocked by a series of explosions. The thick steel doors that had kept them isolated were blown open, and a group of heavily armed personnel in unfamiliar and strangely unique uniforms and weapons stormed in. However, they were unmistakably human. These rescuers quickly took control of the situation. They ushered Victor and the other captives out of the facility, eventually returning their clothing and personal items. Under the cover of darkness, the soldiers were transported back to their respective posts. Before releasing them, the rescuers gave strict orders never to speak of what had transpired. For years, Victor kept this extraordinary experience a secret, even from his wife. The memory of it haunted him, contributing to post-traumatic stress disorder that would affect him for the rest of his life. It wasn't until he was in his twilight years, battling dementia, that Victor finally shared his story with his son Andrew. Andrew was initially skeptical of his father's tale. However, he was struck by the consistency of Victor's account. Even as Victor's health declined and his memory faded due to Lewy body and Parkinson's disease dementia, the details of this strange encounter remained vivid and unchanged. The story was always the same: the abduction, the giant beings, the puzzling tasks, the offered encounter with women, and the dramatic rescue. In the final years of his life, Victor became obsessed with alien movies. He told Andrew he was searching for anything that resembled his experience, desperate to find some validation for what he'd been through. This obsession, coupled with the unwavering consistency of his story, made Andrew wonder if there might be some truth to his father's incredible tale. After Victor's passing at the age of 78, Andrew, still contemplating the implications of his father's story, shared it with his uncle, Victor's brother. To Andrew's surprise, his uncle was already intimately familiar with the account, having heard it from Victor back in the 1960s, long before any signs of dementia had appeared. This corroboration from the past, along with the consistency of Victor's account, even in the advanced stages of dementia, left Andrew wondering. Could this incredible story of abduction actually be true? Had his father, a man known for his honesty and practical nature, really experienced an extraordinary encounter with beings from another world? Creature in the Corner. On a warm spring night in 2023, in a quiet suburb of Austin, Texas, an ordinary man's life was about to take an extraordinary turn. Jacob Morley settled into bed beside his wife Tricia, unaware that he was about to experience an encounter that would challenge his understanding of reality. As the time passed midnight, Jacob drifted into a restless sleep. In his dreams, he found himself standing in an unfamiliar kitchen, witnessing a scene straight out of a poltergeist movie. Drawers slammed open and shut, cabinet doors swung wildly, and the pantry door seemed to have a mind of its own. Gripped by fear, Jacob began to pray, his words a desperate attempt to ward off the unseen force. It was at this moment that Tricia, sensing her husband's distress, instinctively kicked his foot. The nudge jolted Jacob awake, and for a brief moment he felt relief wash over him. He turned to thank his wife, but received no response. Assuming she had already fallen back asleep, Jacob rolled over, ready to settle back into what he hoped would be a more peaceful rest. But as his eyes adjusted to the darkness of their bedroom, Jacob saw something that made his blood run cold. There, standing silently in the corner by the bedroom door, was a figure unlike anything he'd ever seen before. The entity stood approximately 4 feet tall, his body thin and frail-looking. His skin was a dark, matte grey colour, almost blending into the shadows of the room. Long, slender arms hung at his sides, seemingly too delicate to be functional. The torso was small, almost childlike in proportion, topped by a narrow neck that supported the creature's most striking feature, its head. Disproportionately large and bulbous, the head dominated the being's entire form, but it was the eyes that truly captivated Jacob's attention. Huge, almond-shaped and jet black, they wrapped slightly around the sides of the creature's head. These dark orbs stared directly at Jacob, unblinking and unwavering. The being looked exactly like the stereotypical grey alien, often described in UFO encounters and popular culture, a realization that both fascinated and terrified him. Jacob's first instinct was to doubt his own senses. He rubbed his eyes, certain that this apparition was merely a lingering effect of his recent nightmare. But when he looked again, the figure remained as real and present as the bed beneath him. In an attempt to rationalize what he was seeing, Jacob began to look around the room, expecting to find the same visual anomaly in the other corners. He scanned the ceiling, the floor, and the walls, but found nothing out of the ordinary. Yet every time his eyes returned to the corner by the door, the entity remained, watching him with an unnerving stillness. Remembering the flashlight he kept by the bed, a precaution against the notoriously unreliable Texas power grid, Jacob slowly reached for it, his hand trembling. He switched on the beam and directed it towards the corner where the being stood. To his amazement, the creature became less visible in the direct light. It was still there, but now appeared even more transparent, as if it existed in a state between our world and another. Determined to prove to himself that he wasn't hallucinating, Jacob carefully swept the flashlight beam across the entire room. Every other corner, every shadow, appeared normal under the harsh light. It was only in that one spot by the bedroom door that the strange anomaly persisted. As Jacob switched off the flashlight, the being came back into clear focus, its large eyes still fixed unwaveringly upon him. In a final desperate attempt to dispel the vision, Jacob squeezed his eyes shut tightly, silently willing the entity to disappear. But when he opened them again, it remained as real and present as ever. Faced with the undeniable presence of something truly extraordinary, Jacob felt a wave of panic wash over him. His heart raced and his palms grew clammy with sweat. In this moment of intense fear and confusion, Jacob found himself frozen, unable to look away from the otherworldly being. Then, suddenly, something remarkable happened. The alien entity, which had remained motionless throughout the encounter, began to change. Jacob watched in astonishment as the being slowly started to fade from view. It was as if he was being erased from reality, becoming more and more transparent with each passing second. The process took about 20 seconds in total, during which time the creature maintained its unnerving stare. Its huge black eyes remained fixed on Jacob until the very last moment, when it simply vanished. One instant it was there, a faint outline against the darkness of the room, and the next it was gone, leaving Jacob alone with his racing thoughts and pounding heart. As the first rays of dawn began to creep through the curtains, Jacob found himself wide awake, unable to process what he had just experienced. He didn't wake Tricia, unsure of how to even begin explaining what had happened. Instead, he reached for his phone and began searching online, desperate for any information that might help him make sense of his encounter. In the days and weeks that followed, Jacob struggled to come to terms with what he had seen. He found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about the nature of reality and our place in the universe. The experience had shaken him to his core, leaving him with a mix of fear, wonder, and an insatiable curiosity. His religious beliefs were also challenged in ways he'd never anticipated. Jacob found himself pondering how the existence of extraterrestrial life might fit into his Christian worldview, or whether this being might have even been spiritual in nature. What makes Jacob's encounter particularly intriguing is the entity's reaction to light. Could the being lower visibility when illuminated by the flashlight suggest the possibility of some advanced light-bending camouflage technology? As with such encounters, Jacob's experience left him with more questions than answers. Was this truly a visitation from an extraterrestrial being? Could it have been some sort of interdimensional entity? Or was it, as skeptics might suggest, simply a vivid hallucination brought on by the state between sleep and wakefulness, known as sleep paralysis?